Hello, this is Jeremy from Continuous. We create intelligent automation solutions purpose-built for financial institutions. Our tools are known for amplifying the back office team members by focusing their efforts as we strip away their tedious work through our automation platform. Today, we're diving into Permission Assist. Permission Assist is within our InfoSec solutions, and it's set up to specifically help banks with their identity and access management, or IAM. Permission Assist does that by organizing user and permission data across your entire ecosystem in order to streamline various IAM processes while keeping your compliance or regulatory bodies satisfied. Today in this demo, we're going to focus on three major areas. First, we're going to talk about sorting and organizing user and permission data, modeling ideal access for a given role, and then we're going to do a facilitation of an onboarding of a team member or an employee and a termination. Now, before diving into this demo, let's quickly review our practical approach to identity and access management within Permission Assist. So as you can see on the slide, over on the left-hand side, you see boxes that signify applications. Now within Permission Assist, you can have as many different applications as you want. And this next yellow arrow, we're going to signify either integrating with an API or some sort of modern interface, or be able to bring in that information in whatever that third-party application's native source is. So that could be something like a report or an export. But the key thing, whenever we're sourcing any of this user and permission information through what we like to call our plugins, we're always trying to go back to whatever that source natively has. And the reason that's important is because, number one, if we do want to streamline these processes, taking out as much human interaction that we can, or if we want to automate it 100%, going back natively allows us to do that. Number two, we do want to make sure, because we are working on information security things, that we're keeping the chain of custody from the source into Permission Assist as clean as possible, so we're not adding additional information security checks for you. And then number three, it is our belief that the best place in order to source user and permission information is from those third-party sources themselves. In other words, that's where we're going to get the most accurate information. So we're always trying to take as much of that effort off of you, and we're going to convert that into our security model within Permission Assist. Today, I'm just going to say it's a staging area that we call the IAM Foundation. Now, we're going to combine it with these three little people up here on top of this diagram, which we call identities. Not only is identities a key part of identity and access management, but it's also a concept that we can use in order to start to see what somebody has access to across the various different systems. So in other words, they have access to this in Active Directory, this in your core, so on and so forth. When we bring in all this information, we combine it and organize it. That's what we can use as a foundation to be able to do or streamline various different IAM processes within your bank. Now, today we're going to leverage this on a couple of key IAM processes. We're going to first talk about, again, modeling ideal access for a role, or what some people call user access templates, and then we're just going to use it to facilitate onboarding and termination. Now, whenever we do any of these processes, it is important to understand that we need to generate different artifacts or reports to prove that out, either for third parties like regulatory bodies, or to use for ourselves in order to reduce risk or increase security type of thing. But that's all part of the platform within Permission Assist in order to cover that. So with that, let's hop into the demo. And the first thing I want to do again is I want to connect us back to bringing in this data. And in order to do that, I'm just going to go up here to Manage and down to Applications. And when I do that, I'm going to jump into a couple of different extremes. The first extreme that I'm going to pick on is Active Directory, and I like to use Active Directory because it is fairly simple. Now, if I go over here to settings, I'm just going to look at how we're connecting to it. And in this case, I'm connected to a domain controller. So I put in some information, I'm going to hit the sync button, and it's going to start actually bringing this information in, pushing it out, all of those type of things. Now, the other extreme I love to go into is Fedline. And the reason I like to go into Fedline is it is challenging from the standpoint that, number one, it doesn't have any integrations that we can use. There is no partnership program. There is no kind of facilitation on how this information should look like. We are just going to be able to look at the subscribers and roles report, which is a PDF that looks like this. And we are going to have to respond to whatever the Fed does whenever they do it. So what does Permission Assist do in this case, or particularly our plugin? So the first thing that's going to happen, as soon as this PDF is uploaded into Permission Assist, it's going to go through validation. So it's going to say things like, does this report look any different than we're expecting? Does it look like somebody manipulated it in a way that we weren't thinking? Does it look like it came from the Fed? Things like that. So validation is going to make sure that's quality. After we get through the validation steps, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to pull out this information. In other words, we're going to change it from data into actual information. So we're basically going to say, here's the users, here's the modules, here are the permissions, all of those type of things. And then we're going to take that information, we're going to convert it into that security model that I was talking about. So if we kept on going from application to application, what you'd end up seeing is us sourcing this information different ways. You'd see it looking at different styles, all of those type of things. Just to hop down here really quickly to Premier so that we can see that we are using the SCM reports, both the user and group list. I'm sure you guys are used to these type of things. We can also bring in the transaction management system type of user and permission data so that we can leverage that within our security model to do these various different IAM processes. All right. So let's take, now that we've brought in all this information and we've organized it, let's go into the next step, which is let's use this to model some access. And to do that, I'm just going to play around with these financial advisors just because I've been doing some different things within my demo environment here. Now, when I click on one of these, what you're going to notice is that I have various different applications in here. So you can see for my financial advisors, I have Active Directory, LPL ClientWorks, and Scimitar. Now, if I want to go down here, let's just add Premier in here, and now it's going to start showing me some stuff. Now, while that's calculating, I'm going to hop over here to LPL ClientWorks just because I've been playing around with some stuff. But for all my financial advisors, what I'm going to start to do is leverage all of that information that we just talked about bringing in. And we can see it in various different ways. So first off here, you can see that I have 30 of my financial advisors. Now, just to give you a little background, I have nearly 2,000 bankers within my system. And I've said out of those 2,000, I want to look at these 30. But you can see here for LPL, I have 9 that don't have access to it. Now I can drill in, I can see who's in, I can see who's missing, I can drill into that access if I want. But I can do that not only on the application, but I can do that at a much deeper level. So I can look at the different roles, I can look at the individual privileges, and I can see what do those permissions look like. Now, I think this information right here is gold, and it is gold to have between 2 major roles within your bank. And that is whoever, number one, is managing these entitlement roles. So that could be whoever managed that job description, so to say, a department head, those type of things. So who is managing the financial advisors? But then who understands the security of these various different applications? So who's actually in there configuring it? It could be a system administrator, it could be a business user that understands that security. But commonly what happens is these 2 roles have a challenge in having this conversation, and we can bridge that gap by actually, instead of looking at a blank page, we can leverage this information to say this is how it is configured within LPL ClientWorks today, for example. This is actual usage, and then we can start to massage things and say, what should it look like? Now, these next two columns over here are called configuration and ideal access, and these are really helpful for the people that are managing the security within these applications. So configuration, you can kind of think of that as how does somebody get access? So in this case, how do my financial advisors get access to be able to do things they want? And a lot of our systems have different roles and groups, and I'll jump down to Premier to show that here in a little bit. The last column is ideal access, and that's going to show what is the end result. So if I hop down here to Premier, which I just added, not only are you going to see like here's all of the different roles and groups within my application, but you're going to see the individual privileges down here. Again, you can see all that usage data as well. But you're going to notice if I go down here to the configuration, let's say I want to look at this teller with upload. I see this little link with a 136 behind it, and that's going to tell me today, if I was to look at Premier, all of these 136 privileges would be assigned if I give them access to this group. So this is really allowing me to say like, hey, should I set up new groups? Can I use these groups? All of those type of things. Now, if I go over here and I just turn on a couple of these for the heck of it, and then I hop down here, what you're going to notice is that I have in my end result, this is going to tell me exactly what my financial advisor should have access to off of the individual privileges off of that configuration. So I think that, again, this can be very helpful for understanding how would it be ideal to set up the configuration. Now, if you were really paying attention, you probably saw some numbers changing over here as I was turning things on and off. That's actually Permission Assist helping with versioning all of this information. And I'll jump over here in a second, but before I do that, one of the things that we always like to say is all of this kind of user access templates, access modeling is changing underneath us all the time. And it tends to change in a couple of different ways. So one way is you as a bank, you're making changes. Like maybe, for example, you want your tellers to be able to do cashier's checks. Now, I think that is, even though it's a little bit of a pain, at least because you're managing that change control, you can manage the frequency. But the other thing that you can't really do about that is that all of the third parties are changing all those applications. Every single new release, they're adding new privileges, they're making changes, all of that type of stuff. But since we're cataloging all this information within Permission Assist, we can do fun things like this and be like, show me new privileges I've never seen before. Now it's going to elevate or escalate all of those new privileges or things that we need to be looking at. And again, that brings it back to this conversation between the person that is managing this role and the people that are managing these applications. So now you can have a productive conversation about here's new stuff. What do we want to do about it because we've elevated that risk? Now to hop back over to here to this version tab, I took a baseline of this back in the day. Over time, as we've been adding applications, as we're making changes, we've been keeping track of that. We have a summary of all of these changes over here on the applications. I can see all the detail of all these changes. Now, as soon as I commit this version, it's going to say this is the model or the golden way that our financial advisors should be looking. And that's really going to help us out on lots of various different IAM processes because we have all of these puzzle pieces that allow us to do comparisons, that give guidance, all of those type of things within those processes. So this really not only helps us to speed up a lot of these processes, but it also kind of helps us to mature our identity and access management. And it does that because we have a true north or a direction that we are going to be going. Best of all, it really helps to fill a major gap between, again, those two different people, our business line and typically the people that are managing these applications. And because we've gone through that effort of having that mutual understanding, it helps us speed up a lot of these different things. All right. Let's go from there to really quickly onboarding a team member. So over here, I'm going to start a request and I'm going to go into the onboarding form and I'm just going to start typing in some information. Now, one of the things that we found is this form is actually developed off of whenever we've been talking to banks, they have some sort of onboarding form or basic thing within their HR system where they're gathering some information, and they're going to leverage that information in order to create a user within the various different systems. The problem is that when we get down to what they should have access to, we have a lot of confusion, or we'll say something like, hey, copy this person. And that's not very accurate on how it should be done. So what we're doing differently here within Permission Assist is as we're selecting various different things that they should know, we're going to tie this back to what is the entitlement role that they should have access to, or multiple entitlement roles. So I'm just going to go through here and I'm going to continue to select various different things. And what's going to happen, just try to connect the dots here a little bit, is as I was answering various of these questions, for example, what type of person or identity is this? You're going to see that I have an employee here. Well, I set up my example bank to say that all employees are going to have this base level of entitlements or base level of permissions. So for example, maybe all of them are going to be in Active Directory. They're going to be all in the user group sort of thing. Now that can be as many systems as we want, but then we're also going to tend to have various different things depending on their role. So in this case, I have some specific things for my tellers, but then we have optional things that maybe a supervisor or HR could say, yes, I want to approve this, no, I don't, type of thing. So we have those type of elements as well. So again, we're now leveraging this to say, hey, can we answer questions to help them select the right entitlements without them having to understand all the detail of that security? So we could schedule things. I'm just going to do it immediately here. And then I'm going to submit this so it can get processing. Now in my demo system, I did set up a very simple workflow where I basically said, okay, now let's take that onboarding request and let's go for approval. I sent it back over to me for approval. And you're going to notice that I have all of the applications that they should get added to. In this case, I just have Active Directory and Premier, and I can do an approval process. Now, as soon as I do this, now it's going to get divided up into access requests. Those access requests can get their own approval process if you want. They can get routed to wherever they need to go for execution or provisioning. You can do execution or provisioning in multiple different ways. So you can do it within Permission Assist. We can connect into APIs if they have some sort of modern interface. You can leverage some of our other continuous tools in order to be able to connect and do workarounds if some of those applications don't have that. You can write your own scripts if you would like to do that as well. And then finally, if all of those don't work out, we're going to at least create a ticket with context. In other words, we're going to say this is exactly what we need to do in order to do that thing. And again, that can get routed out to various different areas. So if you have a decentralized environment where maybe your IT is doing kind of some of those core systems, but for maybe a department like a mortgage department, they're doing their own thing, you can still monitor what's happening overall. And as these are checking off and getting completed, we can see what the cycle time for them is individually, make sure that everything is done. We can do validation on each one of these individually or overall. So in other words, we could say something like, we want to bring in the data and say like, here was the original request. Then we went off and executed it. And then we did a check to make sure that it was good type of thing. You can do that with data, or you can even have people, if you want a secondary person coming in doing it. Whenever we do any of these activities, we can actually take and we have activity logs on them, or what some people call audit logs. So we can see exactly when is Permission Assist doing stuff, how did it get routed, who approved it, those type of things. Now I'm going to quickly go over to a termination just to show that if we want to do something a little bit different here, not worry about those entitlement roles. That's what a termination or offboarding is going to be about. So I'm just going to go over here. I'm going to grab somebody randomly, and I'm going to say that it's going to happen immediately, and I'm going to send this off to the team. Now, what you kind of see that is key difference here is that, number one, we didn't ask a lot of questions because we didn't need to know. All of the systems that are currently in Permission Assist. We already know their access. So we're going to actually take and send this out to all of the areas that need to manage it. A lot of times when we talk to our banks, they'll say something like they have some sort of email list or a notification list where they actually send out a message anytime that somebody leaves the organization, and then system administrators are going in and checking individually. But that is obviously very inefficient from the standpoint that we already know what they have access to, so why not just tell the individuals or put automations in place in order to remove them from those systems? Again, kind of same concept. We'll be going through all of these, watching cycle times. You can have approvals on them if you want to, all of that type of thing. So from there, a couple of key things that we wanted to touch on today's demo. So first, we wanted to talk about bringing in that information, how we can start to leverage that for various different IAM processes, and how within Permission Assist, that's kind of a core concept that we think having this IAM foundation allows us to do a lot of these things more quickly. We then went and modeled a quick role or played around with an existing role with our financial advisors, but you can create new ones and things of that nature. We talked about versioning or change control of those roles. We then did an onboarding request and a termination request just to show one way that we can leverage this data within Permission Assist in order to speed up kind of key IAM processes for your bank. With that, we are looking forward to digging in more and finding out the best way that we can make a real impact on your identity and access management. Thank you for joining me today.